You know, our bodies follow this incredibly strict, invisible rulebook. Heal this way, grow that way. But what happens when that rulebook gets completely scrambled? Today, we're going to look at two of the most unbelievable conditions on the planet, where the body's most basic instructions go profoundly, and honestly, fascinatingly wrong.
I mean, it sounds like something straight out of mythology, right? But for a very small number of people, this is their reality, a lifelong battle. Just try to imagine your own body turning against its fundamental blueprint, transforming one kind of tissue into something totally different, something you'd never expect.
Now, of course, these aren't the official medical names, but these nicknames, they capture the shocking physical reality of these two conditions perfectly. On one side, you have a disease that causes the skin to erupt in growths that literally look like tree bark. And on the other, a condition that systematically turns muscle and ligaments into solid bone, building a whole second skeleton from the inside out.
So, what do these transformations actually look like? How do they manifest? For one condition, it's this external change that's just impossible to miss. For the other, it's an internal process that is every bit as devastating. So let's start with epidermal dysplasia verruciformis, or EV for short. In people with EV, their immune system just can't handle very common types of HPV. That's the human papillomavirus. This leads to these out-of-control wart-like lesions, and when they become really extensive, especially on places that get a lot of sun, like hands and feet, they can look just like gnarled tree bark, which is exactly how it got that famous nickname. The second condition, fibrodysplasia ossificans progressive, or FOP, involves a transformation that happens completely inside the body. Here, soft tissues, we're talking muscles, tendons, ligaments, they go through this incredible and kind of horrifying metamorphosis, turning into solid bone. Any minor injury, even a simple bump or fall, can trigger a flare-up, and that causes a new piece of this extra skeleton to form, progressively locking joints into place.
So what on earth would cause the body to break its own rules so catastrophically? Well, the answer is hidden deep inside our genetic code, the body's instruction manual. A tiny error, basically a single typo in that blueprint, is what sets these unbelievable processes in motion. And in doing so, it really shows us just how incredibly delicate those instructions are.
Okay, so for EV, the genetic pattern is what's called autosomal recessive. Now that might sound complicated, but think of it like needing two keys to unlock a door. For the condition to show up, a person has to get a faulty gene from both parents. If you only get one copy, you become a carrier, but you won't actually develop the disease yourself.
And here's the really crucial part. The genetic mutation doesn't directly cause the growths. Instead, what it does is it basically shuts down the skin's security system. It leaves the body completely defenseless against certain types of HPV. So the virus gets in, and with no immune response to check it, it just goes wild, causing all those characteristic lesions. It's a brutal but fascinating look at how one genetic weak spot can be exploited by something so common in our environment.
Now, FOP works differently. It's an autosomal dominant disorder. That means you only need one single copy of the mutated gene to get the disease. But what's really wild is that most cases aren't even inherited. They're the result of a brand new spontaneous mutation that just happens in the sperm or the egg. It's a tragic genetic lottery.
The gene responsible for all this is called ACVR1, and you can think of it as the master switch for bone repair in your body. Normally, it flips on to heal an injury, and then it flips right back off. But in FOP patients, that mutation jams the switch permanently in the on position. The body is constantly thinking it's injured and needs to make more bone, so it just starts building bone everywhere it shouldn't. And studying this one faulty switch is giving researchers incredible insights into how our bodies are supposed to manage healing.
Because these conditions are just so rare. FOP affects about 1 in 2 million people. Getting the right diagnosis is a massive challenge. And for these patients, a misdiagnosis isn't just frustrating, it can be absolutely catastrophic.
Get this, an astonishing 90% of FOP cases are initially misdiagnosed. The painful swellings that signal a flare-up are often mistaken for things like aggressive cancer or fibrosis. And this leads doctors down a path of ordering tests and procedures that can cause irreversible damage.
Think about it. When a doctor suspects cancer, the standard next step is a biopsy. But for an FOP patient, that very procedure, cutting into muscle tissue, is seen by the body as a major trauma. It triggers that faulty gene into overdrive, causing an explosion of new bone growth right at the biopsy site, making the condition dramatically worse. And here is the real tragedy. There is a telltale sign, present from birth, that could prevent all of this harm.
malformed great toes. They are a classic hallmark of FOP. But because the condition is so rare, this critical clue, this connection between the toes and the swellings that show up later, is so often missed.
So, with no cure available for most of their history, how do patients actually live with these conditions day to day? Well, management is this delicate, lifelong balancing act of avoiding triggers and just trying to control the symptoms.
You can see here, patients with these two conditions are fighting very different battles. For EV, the focus is all external. Surgically removing lesions, using things like cryotherapy, and managing the extremely high risk of skin cancer, especially in sun-exposed areas. But for FOP, the battle is internal and preventative. Life becomes a constant effort to avoid any injury, any fall, any bump, even an injection that could trigger a new, irreversible wave of bone formation.
But the story doesn't just end with management, thankfully. Understanding the genetic blueprint of these diseases has really opened up a whole new chapter, the targeted search for a way to rewrite the ending.
The journey to an FOP treatment is just this incredible story of scientific progress. The discovery of that ACVR1 gene back in 2006, that was the critical breakthrough. It finally gave scientists a specific target to aim for. All of that research led to this moment in 2023, the FDA approval of palovarotene, the first ever treatment designed to reduce new bone formation in FOP patients. It's a massive, massive leap forward.
For patients with EV, though, the journey to a cure is, well, it's a lot more complex. Because the condition comes from a faulty immune defense rather than a single overactive switch, finding a targeted therapy is a huge challenge. So for now, the daily reality is a rigorous schedule of managing symptoms and being incredibly vigilant about screening for skin cancer. Up to 2/3 of patients will develop it, often as early as their 20s or 30s, which makes research into prevention and treatment a critical, ongoing fight.
And this all brings us to a final, bigger question. By studying these incredibly rare, extreme examples of the body's rules being broken, we learn so much about how those rules are supposed to work for all of us in the first place. We unlock secrets about bone growth, immune response, and tissue regeneration that could hold the key to treating much more common problems down the road. It seems the body's rarest errors might just be the key to unlocking its greatest secrets.